I need you to hate so I can use you for your energy.
This is real sales talk. Real sales advice from real sales practitioners. Giving you tips on how to dominate your sales quota are your co-hosts, Sean Mitchell and Phil Keene. This episode is brought to you by Convertist. We are incredibly excited to have partnered together with Convertist, which helps SaaS and services run managed outbound campaigns for teams looking to drive new pipeline opportunities. For teams targeting mid-size and enterprise deals, Convertist integrates with CRMs like Salesforce to uncover actionable data in their sales processes, which enables them to find areas of improvement and double down on strategies that actually work. Benchmark the lead generation performance expected of a seasoned SDR and identify actionable areas of improvement in a sales process, all out of one place with Convertist. For teams looking to measure and enhance their performance of their sales funnel and architect a better revenue engine, cast an application to join the Convertist Slack group. It's at convertist.com/Slack. That's Convertist, convertist.com/Slack, SLACK.
What is going on, Real Sales Talk family? We are deep into season 8, and we have a very special guest, Richard Harris from Harris Consulting Group. I've been begging him to get on the show. Just kidding. I finally asked him. Crazy smart, amazing sales leader, and I think he's going to bring some fire to the show. So tell me a little bit about, you say competition doesn't mean shit in sales, so tell me a little bit why you feel that way.
All right, so the difference between, the reason I've been talking about sales and competition lately is that so many people I know are always looking for competitive people to be in their team. And as I've thought about it and written about it, I wrote a blog about the 5 Cs of sales, whether you're looking for an employee or you're actually looking for a boss. And I realized that it's not competitiveness that I'm looking for first. What I'm really looking for is confidence and courage, right? I need people to have the confidence to try things, willing to be right and willing to be wrong, and the courage to do the same. And it's those two pieces, those two emotional things that are within your psyche that will help you be competitive. So the thought of being competitive first isn't what I'm looking for. I don't know very many competitive people who don't have confidence. I don't know any competitive people who don't have courage. You only got one of them. It's hard to be competitive. So I'm looking for those things. Particularly in, this comes up a lot when people are saying, well, what do you look for in SDRs, where people are early in their sales career and they're looking for, something that they've done in their life that maybe they haven't been in sales yet. And so I tell them to look for confidence and courage. Ask them what they're confident about. Ask them what they're courageous about. Cool. So that's my concept and why I don't think competitiveness is as important as people think it is.
Cool. I can wrap on that for sure. So what we'll do is let's restart the show. Sean will cut up into right now.
Yep.
I'll give you a quick clap. I think that helps, right? That's what they do in movie studios. All right. So we'll get started. Cool. What is going on, Real Sales Talk family? We are back. We have a very special guest deep here in season 8, Richard Harris from Harris Consulting Group. If you don't know him, you should. You're probably living under a rock. I've been begging him to get on the show recently, and he hasn't joined us. Asked him. Richard, thanks for joining us. We're excited about the topic, which is competition in sales is bullshit. And we'll probably put that more eloquently in the title of the show, but that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Big fan of the podcast, so super excited to be a participant at this point. So thank you so much for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited. Let's talk about it. Your competition in sales being bullshit. Why? Talk through where your head's at and where this is starting to come from.
This comes up a lot, particularly in sales, that we're always looking for competitive people. Where have they been competitive in their background? Comes up a lot, particularly with early stage salespeople in their career, often SDRs, BDRs. They're looking for competition. And I think that actually alienates a certain group of people, because when we think competition, we often think about sports, and you don't have to be great in sports to be great in sales. So as I was thinking about this concept over time, and I wrote a piece called the 5 Cs of Salespeople, or the 5 Cs that you're looking for in your next boss. I didn't put competition in there, and I got a little flack for it. But what I did put in there was confidence and courage, because I don't know anybody who's competitive that lacks confidence. I don't know anybody who's competitive that lacks courage. And I think when you take away that sort of sports element, which I also think helps de-bro the sales culture a little bit, right? You can look on confidence and courage and find the same skill sets, if not better, than just by focusing on competitiveness alone.
Yeah, I think it's the confidence that takes you to the, like, when you get pushed down, to stand up and say, all right, you know what, I'm doing it the right way, and I can get this done. I know I can get this done.
Yep. And you gotta have the courage to try things and the confidence to get back up when you've been knocked down, right? It's never going to work the first time. I don't know anybody who's an expert at everything they do, right? I'm battling that with my 7-year-old son right now. He thinks he knows everything. He's got the confidence and the courage, which makes him very competitive, but he's often not right. And I have to sort of coach him on that, to think about it from that perspective. And trust me, it's going to be a lifelong journey for him.
So tell me where this all started from. Whenever you had, like, what was the one thing, what drove you to talk about the 5 Cs? Like, was there an event that happened that made you maybe get a little fired up inside about this topic?
Yeah, so I think a little bit differently, right? Like, I don't run into things quite as often. When I do pick a topic, I do try to write from a different angle, so that it's not the same thing everybody's already talking about. I try to give it something fresh. And I was thinking about where it really came from was I wanted to write an article that would be useful both to the sales leader who's looking for a skill set in salesperson. But the other thing I wanted to give to, in the same article, I wanted to give it to the sales rep and something that they're looking for in their new boss, right? Something that you can do in the interview process from both sides of the table, because so often those articles are written, they're like, best questions to ask your sales candidate, or best questions to ask your super new boss, or whatever it is. So I really wanted to combine it. And then I was just sort of running through these, what were all these things? And all of a sudden I realized they were all starting with C. Competitiveness was in there in the beginning. And it just sort of came out that way. And then now I still see these posts around competitiveness. We need to find competitive people. I'm like, no, you don't. Change your job description. See what happens. You would have to think about competitive and talk about confidence and courage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look for competitive people, what happens is often you have internal competitive people, which means they're competing against each other. Yeah. And I read a post the other day. It was kind of contradictory to what everybody else was talking about. It's like, we don't have a sales quota for individuals. It's a team quota, which you can go wherever you want with that direction. But I think it's something where it's an interesting tactic to think if we can win together, because sales, just like buying today, is no longer just one person you're buying from. There's 5 to 6 to 7 to 15 people that are buying from. Like, sales, you're not winning alone, especially not big deals. Yep. So you really have to adjust how you win as a team. And competitive as a team. And gosh, I don't know who to cite this to. I forgot who it was. They were talking about it. Where sales is not, it's not a family, it's a team. And if you think about it that way, it's much different. Yeah. So I think that it's competitive in a different way than a lot of people see as internal competitiveness, rather than going out to win and succeed together. So curious to see anything else that you have on the topic, and we can kind of go from there.
On competitive, I guess I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything in the competitive side of things that you think people are getting wrong today?
I think the piece where managers are getting it wrong, and I think this may be even part of the genesis of what I was writing towards, was that sort of this old school competitiveness that I, as a Gen Xer, grew up with in sales, isn't cutting the mustard anymore, right? Millennials don't buy into that. They do buy into teamwork. They do buy into confidence and courage. And if you can get them to accept those pieces first, right, they'll play the competitiveness card. They'll play that game. But you got to explain why they need to be competitive, which is about confidence and courage, which is bigger than sales. That's about their life. They need to have confidence and courage in everything they do. Be willing to try things, do different things. And I think that generationally, the millennials are doing a much better job of that than Gen Xers are. And I actually love the millennial generation in terms of sales because they get it at a humanistic level that I think Gen Xers, we were not allowed to get. We were just sort of told to STFU, get back on the phone, right? Figure it out. Here's 2 days of product knowledge. Here's how you log shit in the computer. And there you go. Go listen to that guy over there. See what they do right. That was my sales training. So.
Is there a way that you can, if you see someone that has a lot of potential, but they don't have the courage or the confidence, is that something that you ever take a risk on, or that you advise people to take a risk on?
Yeah. And so that actually comes to one of the other C's, which is coachability. So if I see someone who seems to be lacking but may have potential, I need to ask them, what is their ability to be coached? Are they willing to go through the grind, right? And what I will encourage people to do if you're interviewing a sales rep, right, or a potential sales rep, I'll make them tell the rep no. I'll say, look, this is a grind day in and day out. Ask for examples of where you've been through a grind like that. Tell them that, look, these are the skills I'm looking for. I'm looking for confidence and courage. So here's what I want you to do, Mr. or Mrs. Sales Rep. I want you to go out after this interview, call me tomorrow, and give me a story about confidence and courage and why I should actually hire you. And you'd be surprised what number of reps don't actually do it because I've scared them away, which is exactly what I want to do. And then the ones who do, well, at least they're giving me a shot. I still don't have to hire them because of it, but I can at least make them go through an interview process and walk away with something way more empowering for them, something that they now know that they can work on and figure out for themselves. At least that's my piece. That's how I think that it's going to happen.
What I like about that is that you're simulating what they're going to hear when they actually meet with clients or get on the phones and pitch their product. They're going to hear no. And what that confidence and courage gets you is how to try and solve that no, if possible. Come back again with maybe another solution, or ask a few more questions to try and figure out why it's a no.
Right. And so that's what I want to know. That's what I'm trying to get them to figure out. And I think that that's the piece that Gen Xers lose when working with millennials or trying to hire millennials. And by doing some kind of personal exercise like this, it makes for a deeper connection. It also, I think, lets the potential sales rep know what kind of boss they're going to get, right? That, hey, this person is trying to teach me something, which is what I know everybody wants.
What happens if the person never follows up? Is that a done deal? Or, I mean, as a sales manager, do you just say, no, that's it? Even if you see possibility and potential in that person and they don't follow up and respond with that instance of courage?
Absolutely. I don't mind helping someone and coaching someone, but they got to meet me halfway, right? It's not that hard. I've had people also pick up the phone and say, hey, thanks for telling me to do this because I don't want to do it. So I'm not going to call you back. Or they'll email me and, they'll kind of figure it out, right? And again, if you're listening to this, you can even say to them, hey, I want you to call me back. By the way, if you decide not to do it, by the way, the smart thing you should do is email me tomorrow and say, hey, I think I'm going to pursue something else. I said, that's the appropriate way to handle business. So I'm happy to even give them that piece of advice and teach them how to say no in a polite way, right? So again, I see this particularly, with salespeople of any skill set, not just the millennial younger generation, but any skill set. We've forgotten some of the basics, right? And I talk about this all the time. It's about sales karma. You do these things not because I necessarily want to weed them in or weed them out, but I just know it's going to put good karma in the world for me as a sales leader, as a sales coach, as, I have clients all the time. Every client I sign, I say, hey, sales reps, you can tweet at me, call me, LinkedIn me, here's my information. I will walk through any sales question you have a year from now after my sales training. And you'd be shocked as to how many people don't actually do it, right? Here I am willing to give you advice, help you walk through a problem if your manager's too busy or you guys are stuck. Hey, I'm here to help. And for me, that's just good karma. Like, I think that's what we need to do more of.
I have learned that characteristic of persistency over time in my sales career. Do you tend to find that younger sales reps have not learned that yet? Or is it more of a personality thing? Or is it more of like a sales characteristic?
It's a little bit of a characteristic, but I'll talk to you about it in a different way. And I think we're going to say the same thing. Ironically, it goes to this 5 Cs thing, is that I'm looking for someone with consistency. I don't need to know that they're persistent, because oftentimes I feel like persistent means pushy, particularly if I'm working with somebody new. I want to know that they understand what it means to be consistent, right? How to build the process, develop a process, follow the process, right? Can they be consistent in that manner, right? I'll ask them, how did you do your job search? What are you doing consistently over and over and over again, right? Little things like that. So I think we're saying the same, they mean the same thing. I think it's just a different spin, right? Like I said, I'm trying to find a fresh way to talk about stuff. So, so tell me if I'm wrong, or tell me if I'm not hitting what you're looking for.
No, I think it makes sense. And if you're looking at the world where I've actually interviewed a lot of SDRs in my career, and one thing that's what's good for me as a fit might not be the same for the person down the street. So I've actually found a lot of managers that maybe align with different types of people and personality sets. So I hand people off to them. And I think one, as a manager, understanding who you're looking for. And one piece of advice I give every single SDR as they interview with me is, listen, I might not be the right person for you. I'm pretty brash, pretty direct. I'll tell you your feet stink, or you need to take a shower. Like, maybe not that far, but I think I'll be very, very direct with you. And I'll tell you what problems you have in the world. If you can't handle that, you need to go to somebody else. But I can give you some really good people that, based off your personality set, fit with you better. And I think my advice I give to them is, look across the table. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And when you sit down to a boss or a leader or whoever that is, can they help you take that next step? And if you don't think that's true, then you shouldn't interview there, and you shouldn't take the next step with them. They need you just as much as you need them. And I think it's something where if you give yourself that equal business stature and you put yourself in a position to be powerful, you're going to look at the conversation differently. And you'll actually have the conversation with if I was interviewing with you, Richard, like, it would flow. We would have a conversation. And I bet at the end of it, we'd either decide whether it works or not. I mean, you're in a sales call, just like I think you're just selling yourself. Tell me things like, maybe if there's an interview, whenever you've interviewed an SDR or even an AE, that they've done something you're like, wow, that wowed me in an interview. Like, is there one thing that really caught you off guard? Like, man, I wish everybody's did it this way.
Real Sales Talk family, want to take a quick break just to say thank you to our partner Convertist. If you're interested in improving your game to drive leads, opportunities, or closes, join the Convertist Slack group, a place where sales and marketing operators can talk best practices to architect a revenue engine. Cast an application at convertist.com/Slack. That's convertist.com/Slack. Now let's get back to the episode.
I'll give you a couple. By the way, I have had to have that conversation about you actually smelling you need to take a shower on more than one occasion. So if you run into it, call me. I'll coach you through it. The point is well taken that it has to be done. It's been a while since I've interviewed an SDR, right? So I'm trying to think about. I think I'm looking for the people who have shown me in their life that they've done the grunt work, right? They tell me a story. I once hired a woman, this is a long time ago. She must have been about 6'2", 130, right? Like a very thin, frail woman. And I asked her in her interview, I said, what's been your greatest accomplishment in life? And she said, I lost 200 pounds. And I said, what? And she said, yeah, here. And she pulled out these pictures. And I said, well, first of all, congratulations. But as soon as she told me that, I knew that she knew what it meant to commit to a process, stick with it. It's going to have ups and downs. I was just shocked. Like, it blew me away. And it had nothing to do with sales, right? It had all to do with her personality. And within a year, she was crushing it. And, this was in 2001. I was in San Francisco, and it was probably OTEing around 70 grand. Nobody in her family's ever made that kind of money. Like, this is one of the It almost became one of these projects we find as managers, right? Where I'm willing to give this person a shot. You were asking earlier, how do I, will I take that shot? Yeah, I'll take that shot with that person anytime they can show me something like that.
Yeah, I think there's so many intangibles about people that you really kind of walk in. That's an interesting take, is like someone came and told you a really heartfelt story, and people buy an emotion. You're buying essentially them to be an employee for you. And I think that's something when you can tell them that story and it hits home, you're going to attach yourself to that. And you're saying, you're going to want to be a part of what she's building.
Yeah. And I think to your point, it's all about vulnerability. That seems to be one of the other new buzzwords, right? We need to be more vulnerable. I think we've all known it, particularly for those at my level and, the many years that I've been in sales. Vulnerability was seen as a weakness for Gen X. And I think that for this new generation of sales and the way the buyer's journey has shifted, it's not going to help, right? You got to be vulnerable. You can't be that sort of closed-minded person. So,
I'm really curious about the correlation between athletes and sales. I think this is a really fascinating similarity. So, are you finding that there's any particular type of person, being maybe an athlete, that innately understands what it means to have that courage and confidence?
So again, I have to be very careful because I haven't interviewed a lot of people lately, right? I talk to them, right? I coach and train them, so I don't always know their full background. And maybe that was the reason I was moving away from competitiveness, because it was something I couldn't find. I couldn't see it in the groups that I teach in front of, and I needed to find something else. I create a game whenever I go to sales training. Hey, whoever does whatever in our training for the day will win a prize. I do all that kind of stuff. But my relationship with the reps is very different than if I'm a sales manager, right? So it's a little bit harder. I'm not sure I can best answer that question, right? And I think if I came up with something, I might sound intelligent, but I'd be pulling it out of my ass. So
Yeah,
I'll defer if that's okay. Or if there's a better way to ask the question.
So one thing I think that the deferral is fine. One thing I've done is I've actually asked the question, so tell me how you've been successful, which is different than framing, tell me how you've basically gone and done whatever and been competitive. So tell me how you've been successful means that for your sense, it's, hey, I lost 200 pounds and now look at me, like I'm kind of in this situation. Like there was this amount of confidence and courage to, one, tell you that story, but also be confident enough to be able to say, hey, I did it and I'm here. Yeah. And it also tells you how they frame themselves. So if they frame themselves as a successful person, there's a certain amount of fight that it took to get to be a successful person. And I don't care if they told me, hey, I found a parking meter and I made it here on time. However they see themselves as successful, as long as there's a good story behind it and there's something, like there's a lot of intangibles behind, tell me what it takes to be successful, or tell me how you've been successful in your life. It just brings a little bit of something out of them.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the ability to tell stories is also in there, which I think is that's the vulnerability, right? I can tell someone's vulnerable if they can weave a good story, right? And they can make it about themselves.
So anything else on the topic that you're running into? So you talk to a lot of people, a lot of leaders, a lot of frontline people. It's not about being competitive, and I definitely think what you're telling me makes a lot of sense, or telling Sean and I makes a lot of sense. Anything else that you're looking for? So that the rest of the C's, anything else that you've seen telling stories is good, that really, really hits home and resonates well for somebody that's in sales.
Yeah, so I think they have to have a certain level of consistency. They've got to be able to be coachable, right? Those are the things I'm looking for. And I think the other thing I'm really trying to figure out is I will look for how they handle challenges in their life. Challenges is not one of the 5 C's, but I will ask them, how did you handle it? What's been a challenge, right? And then I'll ask them about the process. So aside from this woman telling me, what she had accomplished, I said, well, can you tell me about that process? What did that take? And in sales, because it's all about a process and it's a repetitive process, and you got to be able to deal with the same stuff over and over and over again, day in and day out, update the CRM, all this stuff. So I want to understand what their ability is to follow a process, however they define that themselves.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a key thing. So the challenge side of things is really critical for people. There's a lot you have to overcome in sales, and you're going to get told no 99 times for the one person says yes or whatever other BS people are spouting, or why they think cold calling's dead or cold email or social or whatever else is dead. Like, there's a lot of things that you're going to run into, and most times it's because they've been faced with the challenge and they didn't have the courage to overcome that. So I love where this conversation headed. Sadly, it's coming to the end. So, Richard, we're going to jump into a rapid fire session that we're going to put up on YouTube. But first, tell us how people can find you and get in touch with you.
Sure. You can find me at rharris415 on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. Find Richard Harris. I'm sure I'll pop up. Look for the bald guy with the goatee. You can email me, richard@saleshacker.com. I'm part of the Sales Hacker group, so I'm happy to respond to emails there as well.
Great. So we're jumping into rapid fire. Tell us, Richard, what is your day made up of? Any daily routines that you run through every day?
Good Lord. Probably my biggest challenge, and I'll be super vulnerable and open to this, is that I'm not as organized as I should be, and I don't delegate as well as I should, right? I will gladly admit that freely. But I do try to block out my days for proactive activities versus reactive activities, right? Like I got a slew of invoices I need to get over to my assistant, who's going to help get those out. But I won't do that till like 4 in the afternoon. Like, I'm not doing that during prime time, right? I make sure that I spend at least an hour on social media every day, unless I'm at a client. But even then, I've got stuff buffered out just to make sure something comes out so that I can have things coming out there. And then I also have to block out time for writing every day, which is also a very hard thing to do. At least for me, it is at this point. Other than that, I'm, knock on wood, I'm pretty lucky that I don't have to do a ton of cold calling and cold emailing. I have to do a lot of outreach and staying connected by adding value and reminding people I'm still out here with something good to say. But I don't necessarily have to follow up, check in, and spend a day cold calling. Every now and then, about twice a quarter, I will schedule cold call days so that I can try my stuff, right? I got to make sure my shit works, right? If it doesn't work, then I can't teach it. So I will go through some of those processes, and I'll pick a city and I'll pick 10 companies, and I'll have the titles I want, and I'll run them through a cadence.
Awesome. Tell me something tactical. So we're practitioners. We like to get more practitioners, some more advice. Tell me something practical we use on sales calls today.
Yeah. Something practical to use every time your prospect asks you a question, answer the question truthfully and go, what made you ask that question? Ask them why that's important, because the answer to your question will actually be the real question they wanted to ask about. What they ask you is not what they're trying to solve, ever.
Right. It gets you into their psyche. How are they thinking? Why are they thinking that way? Yep. Strong. All right. Tell me a sales leader that we should be following that we might not have heard of yet.
Scott Leese is a great one. Out of Austin. He's a close friend of mine. We trade stuff back and forth. He has built 3 different teams of 100+ sales reps in multiple cities for startups. He's on his 3rd one right now. And if you want to know how to do stuff like that, he's the guy to follow.
Great. So Richard, thank you so much for coming on. We can find you at rharris415 on Twitter. Was it richard@saleshacker.com?
Got it.
So you get all over the place. Google search Richard Harris sales and you'll find him, I'm sure. Bald head, goatee, pretty simple. So if you're not listening on the YouTube version, check us out on the YouTube version. If you're on the podcast, he's really handsome. Just all around, just like everything you think he is. Pretty much walks on water in most parts. So Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
I need to get that for my wife later. So thank you, Phil.
Have her call me. We'll talk.
All right. Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Thanks, Richard.
Real Sales Talk. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right, man. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Real Sales Talk. And a big thank you to our sponsor, Convertist. If you enjoyed this episode, go write a review on iTunes or any other podcasting platform.